Most people outside Latin America have heard of Simón Bolívar. Almost no one has heard the names of people who actually made independence possible and paid for it with everything. Colombian independence history, as commonly thought, is a great man narrative. Bolívar dominates the textbooks, but the real history involves dozens of figures who've been systematically erased from the historical record. A woman revolutionary, an intellectual who translated dangerous ideas, an indigenous military leader. I grew up in Colombia. Even in my education there, I didn't learn these stories well. They were absent from official curricula, struck from textbooks, their contributions minimized or completely forgotten. The gap between what actually happened and what we're taught is what sparked this trilogy. The first novel, Manuelita Sáenz, she is remembered, if at all, as Bolivar's lover, but that reduction erases her entirely. She was a military strategist, a spy, a political force. In 1928, she threw herself between Bolivar and an assassination attempt and saved his life. After his death, her letters were destroyed, her name was struck from official records, and she was exiled to a small Peruvian port town where she died in obscurity. Researching this novel meant reconstructing her story from fragments, letters that survived, accounts from people who knew her, documents hidden in archives across South America. It's an act of historical recovery. The second novel, in 1793, Antonio Nariño did something that sounds simple. He translated the French Declaration of the Rights of Man into Spanish. The first time this document appeared in the Americas in Spanish, it cost him everything. He was imprisoned, exiled, his family destroyed, his fortune seized. A single document was so dangerous to colonial power that an empire would dismantle a man's entire life to suppress it. Why? Because once people could read their own rights in their own language, the colonial system couldn't hold. Researching this novel meant understanding how ideas become threats and how intellectual courage looks when it's measured in personal devastation. The third novel, José María Melo, was Colombia's only indigenous president of Pijao heritage, a brilliant military strategist who fought across South America. His presidency lasted months before he was overthrown. But here's what haunts me. Indigenous people fought and died for independence. They were essential to every liberation army. But when the new republics were formed, indigenous voices were systematically excluded. Melo's story is about that contradiction, about how indigenous leadership is invisible even when it's essential. Researching this meant centering a voice that official history tried to erase. I co-wrote two of these novels with Colombian historians, Mauricio Beltrán on Nariño, Guillermo Padilla on Melo. Why did collaboration matter? Well, literary craft is one thing. Deep historical expertise, living connection to these families, knowledge of archives, understanding the cultural context is another thing. Collaboration let us bring both together. Writing about Colombian history as a Colombian American living in the Pacific Northwest also meant learning from historians embedded in that world, whose families still carry these stories orally. These aren't just historical stories locked in the past. They're about whose voices get included in the national story, about the gap between official history and what actually happened, about what it costs to challenge power, Every country tells itself a story about its founding. Who is in that story? Who is left out? What gets erased? And what happens when we recover those voices? The Colombian Independence Trilogy, Manuelita Sáenz, The Untamed Liberator, Antonio Nariño, Echoes of Liberty, and José María Melo, Warrior Without Borders. All available in English and Spanish, Kindle and paperback. Links in the description. Learn more at ricardogomez.net.